I'm really not trying to be witty in what I'm saying. But I just want to say this. To say that God is all-knowing can be taken one of two ways. One, that God knows everything. And that's one way. That's almost like the traditional way of interpreting that. God knows everything. God knows everything that's going to happen. See, I used to think about that. God knowing everything. That means he knows the past, he knows the present, he knows the future. He knows everything that's going to happen. He knows everything that happened. In which case, why would God make judgments? That don't even make sense. Because that means he knew, like, for example, before he even said, let there be light. Before he said, let there be light, he knew he was going to create Adam and Eve. He knew that Eve was going to do what she did. He knew that Adam was going to follow. He knew he was going to punish them. He knew that before he even created the universe. He had knowledge of that. Now, did God have a choice? Did God have a choice? Could he have said, you know what, all that terrible stuff is going to happen, and all these things are going to go wrong. And if I don't create the universe, there's not going to be all this suffering and crazy stuff going on. So let me not create a universe. That would be totally irresponsible for me to create a universe where I know all these terrible things are going to happen. I know all these things are going to go wrong. I'm giving these people free will, and I know they're going to mess it up. I know it. I don't believe it. I know it. I don't believe it. I know it. Let me go ahead and create the universe anyway. See, I kind of wonder, did God have a choice? And does God have control over everything? God is all powerful. The idea I get from that is that God can control everything. Nothing happens that's out of control. But yet, if you give people free will, they're not under your control. In fact, even if everything had gone perfect, let's assume that the whole Adam and Eve story turned out different. Still, people are not under God's control if he's giving them free will. They're under their own control. They're doing what they want to do. They're making their own choices. So God isn't all powerful. So we got to make a decision. Either God is responsible for everything because he controls everything, or God is not responsible for anything, or maybe there's a third possibility. God controls some things, but he doesn't control other things. And maybe God knows some things and God doesn't know some other things. In which case, God is in the same shape we are. God is no different than a human being. You see, because how can we believe the promises in the Bible? Like when God finally destroys the earth, or at least wipe all the wicked people. I always love that word, wicked. When he wipes all the wicked people off the earth. When God does that, how do we know everything is going to be okay after that? Because we should think that, well, it's going to be okay. It's kind of like a repairman telling you he's going to fix your computer. And then, you go to get your computer and all of a sudden things go wrong. It's like, whoops. Yeah. In a new, either earthly paradise is, I was taught, or heaven, whatever way you want to put it. How do we know everything is going to continuously go right? If we're in heaven, what if something goes wrong after Judgment Day? So how can we be sure? How can we be sure that it's all going to be okay? If God is not all-knowing, and he's not all-powerful, how do we know a new Satan isn't going to come up? Or another one of his angels is going to decide that, no, I want to do things my own way. So we don't know. We're not certain. We have no assurance. Very disturbing, isn't it? But there's another thing. And what I was talking about, I said there's two ways we can look at all-knowing. There's another all-knowing, which means that all God is knowing. Not so much knowing everything, but all that God has is knowing. I was thinking that when we know things, in that moment of knowing, we become something like God, if not God, when we know something. You see, a belief can change. You believe something today, and then the next day you could believe something else as new evidence comes up. I might believe, for example, that this vial contains insulin, which I think is what it does contain. I believe it contains insulin. What if I'm wrong? What if it turns out that, I watch the news and they say, oh, they're recalling this insulin because it has something else in it. They put the wrong drug in it. And I said, no wonder why I was seeing pink elephants and things like that. That could be the case. I could have believed one thing and then now I'm believing something else. So, it's just something to think about. I really like to just throw things out there. I don't really like to answer questions. I like to more or less raise questions and get people to think. And that's pretty much what I wanted to say.